Hey fam, welcome back to the 10th Star.
So we are back again with another video and आज हम एक informative video लेके आए हैं. The title आपने पढ़ लिया होगा, How India is trapping China with its
Yes.
military strategy
Ooh.
and it's a geopolitical case study. तो मज़ा आने वाला है and बहुत सही वीडियो होने वाली है क्योंकि
I think
obvious सी बात
it's
है.
very important
It's a
कि आप informed रहो.
Yes, तो
about-
लेट्स बिगिन एंड ये वीडियो है थिंक स्कूल के चैनल पे, तो ओरिजिनल डिस्क्रिप्शन में जाके जरूर चेकआउट करना. लेट्स बिगिन एंड देखते हैं वीडियो कैसी है. बिफोर स्टार्टिंग द वीडियो गाइस, मैं आपके लेके आया एक बहुत सही ऐप, गेमिंग ऐप है जिसपे आप घर बैठे बैठे खेल के पैसे कमा सकते हो अपने मोबाइल के थ्रू. तो ऐप का नाम है रम्मी ओला. तो इसमें आपको ऐप में जाना है, हमारे जो डिस्क्रिप्शन में लिंक है उस पर जाके क्लिक करो, और अगर आप 51 रुपीज़ का रिचार्ज करते हो तो आपको 11 रुपीज़ का बोनस मिलेगा. 201 का करते हो तो आपको 21 रुपीज़ मिलेगा रोज़. तो आपको पहले गेम के अंदर लेके चलता हूँ, आपको बताता हूँ करना क्या है. जैसे गेम के अंदर आ जाओगे गाइज, यहाँ पे आपको अपना मोबाइल नंबर बाउंड करना है एंड वो बाउंड करने के बाद आपको 41 रुपीज़ अलग मिलेंगे एंड आप फ्रेंड्स को शेयर करोगे तो आपको उसका बोनस अलग मिलेगा. मैं आपको बहुत सारी गेम्स अवेलेबल है. मैं आपको ड्रैगन वर्सेस टाइगर खेल के दिखाऊंगा. जैसे आप देख सकते हो इसमें बहुत सारी गेम्स अवेलेबल हैं. तो कोई टाइगर पे बेट करूंगा 10 रुपीज़ और मैं चेक करता हूँ, शायद अगर मैं हार गया तो मैं आपको बताऊंगा उसके बाद आपको जीतना कैसे है. तो यहाँ पे मैंने टाइगर पे बेट करे हैं 10 रुपीज़ और मैं ये हार गया हूँ. अब हम 30 रुपीज़ दोबारा बेट करेंगे, लेकिन हम टाइगर पे ही बेट करेंगे. देखते हैं इस बार टाइगर जीतते नहीं जीता. अगर टाइगर हारा तो हमें 90 रुपीज़ बेट करने पड़ेंगे. तो हम 30 रुपीज़ बेट करें और मैं ये जीत गया हूँ. अब हमें ये जीते हुए पैसों को हम बाहर लॉबी में आएंगे, जीते हुए पैसों को हमें विड्रॉ करना है. तो आप बैंक में भी कर सकते हो और यूपीआई भी कर सकते हो. जैसे मैंने यूपीआई ऑलरेडी ऐड करी है तो मैं यूपीआई में इसमें जो मैंने जीती हुई अमाउंट है वो मैं ऐड करूँगा और मैं उसको विड्रॉल के लिए डाल दूँगा और विड्रॉल सक्सेसफुल हो जाएगा. और यहाँ पे आप 24/7 कभी भी विड्रॉल ले सकते हो. तो ये थी गाइज रम्मी ओला एंड मैंने जैसे घर बैठे बैठे बहुत सारे पैसे अर्न करे. तो आप भी जाओ, हमारे डिस्क्रिप्शन में लिंक है उसके थ्रू ज्वाइन करो एंड घर बैठे बैठे पैसे कमाओ रम्मी ओला के थ्रू.
विस्तारवाद का युग
आवाज कम कर लो.
समाप्त हो चुका है.
कम करूँ अभी आ रही है.
ये युग विकासवाद का है.
Troubles began as early as 2013 when China expanded its Belt and Road Initiative. Massive construction projects in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and the Maldives caused unease in Delhi.
If you ask me, is our relationship normal today? My answer to you is no, it is not.
China is clearly becoming a much stronger military power.
India has also stepped up its participation in the Quad, which is a group of 4 countries, including the US, Australia, and Japan.
बीच में कितना न्यूज़ पे आया था डायमंड नेकलेस.
Hi everybody! In the past 3 episodes of the Geopolitical series, we saw how China started with something called the Belt and Road Initiative to conquer the world trade. Now just to give you a quick recap, firstly, China strategically used Djibouti, Sri Lanka, Myanmar and Pakistan's weak economic situation to surround India. Secondly, China spent billions of dollars into building oil refineries, high-speed cables, railway lines and even gas pipelines to build an alternate trade route around India. And lastly, China is building an extremely strategic railway line from London to China and another railway line from China to Iran,
Sorry.
passing to Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, finally ending at
Dude.
Tehran in Iran. This is how China is literally building its own trade route to become an economic superpower. And in this process, China intends to surround its rivals like India and eventually gain military and economic advantage over the United States. This is what we have covered until now. Now, when China is doing so many things, India is obviously not a saint to keep quiet and let China become stronger, right? So the question over here is, what exactly is India doing to tackle the security implications of the Belt and Road Initiative? What is India's strategy to face China in case of a military conflict? And lastly, what are the study materials to help you understand India's geopolitical moves better? This video is brought to you by Wintwealth, but more on this at the end of the video. The answer to this lies in a very important quote by a historian named Alfred Thayer. In his theory of sea dominance, Alfred Thayer said that whoever conquers the Indian Ocean will dominate the whole of Asia. So let's try to understand why is the Indian Ocean so important in geopolitics. Well, if you look at the world map, you will see that the Indian Ocean region consists of 28 countries spanning across 3 continents and covers 17.5% of the global land area. These countries include 21 members of an association called the Indian Ocean Rim Association. This includes major nations like Australia, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Iran, Kenya, Malaysia, Oman, Singapore, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Thailand, UAE and Yemen. Then there are 7 others who are not a part of this association, which includes Brunei, Cambodia, Maldives, Myanmar, Pakistan, Timor-Leste and Vietnam. And this region is home to over 35% of the world's population, which is around 2.6 billion people. Now, if you notice
That's a
something very
big
peculiar
number.
about all these nations that I stated,
2.6
you will realize
billion.
that the Indian Ocean region is home to some of the fastest growing countries in the world. Secondly, it is one of the most strategic regions in the world, which falls at the crossroads of the global trade itself. The Indian Ocean connects the international economies in the North Atlantic to the Asia Pacific region, and secondly, the major sea routes that connect the Middle East, Africa, and East Asia with both Europe and America also lie in the Indian Ocean itself. And what is absolutely mind-boggling about the Indian Ocean is that 80% of the entire world's maritime oil trade flows through just 3 narrow passages of the Indian Ocean. These passages are
Sorry.
at the Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, and the Strait of Bab el Mandeb. These points are what we call as choke points. As in,
Choke
if you
points.
choke these points, the major part of the world trade itself will come to a standstill. If this is very, very clear to you, let's understand these choke points better. The Strait of Hormuz is a strait between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The Strait of Malacca, as you know, is this place between the Malay Peninsula and the Indian Ocean island of Sumatra. The Bab el Mandeb is a strait between Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula, Djibouti, and Eritrea in the Horn of Africa. This strait connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Eden. And apart from these 3 choke points, we have 4 more, which are the Mozambique Channel, the Suez Canal, the Sunda Strait, and the Lombok Strait. Now, if you remember from our previous episode, China has very clearly entered very close to all these choke points. To establish dominance over the Strait of Hormuz, China has the Gwadar port in Pakistan on a 40-year lease. And it also has its infrastructure and railway lines to Iran. To establish dominance over the Strait of Bab el Mandeb and the Suez Canal, China has debt-trapped Djibouti to build its naval base. And then, to capitalize on the Strait of Malacca, Sunda Strait and the Lombok Strait, China has made strategic alliance with Indonesia to build its infrastructure projects. And if you go through the details of the Chinese relations very, very closely, you will see that China has already established very close relations with the Mozambique
भाई,
government
बहुत तेजी में
and
चलना
has
भाई।
established control over a port called the Dar es Salaam port in
बहुत ज़्यादा, I mean,
Tanzania.
like,
So
I'm
in short,
thinking
the world trade
कितना
can be stopped
ज़्यादा
within a jiffy
elaborate
if you have
करके
control over these
just-
choke points in the
just
Indian
like
Ocean. And at the
owning the
same time,
world.
if you do not have control over these points, your enemy can block your trade in no time. And quite evidently, China has slowly extended its dominance over all these choke points. This is the reason why the Indian Ocean is an extremely crucial region with respect to maritime trade and more importantly for India because of China. But the story does not end here. Apart from maritime trade routes, the Indian Ocean contains some of the most precious resources in the world. In fact, a large portion of the resources of the Indian Ocean is yet to be explored. And it is said that 16.8% of the entire world's reserves and 27.9% of natural gas reserves are in the Indian Ocean itself. And this is where the Indo-China conflict comes in.
The string of pearls theory, very simply, is that China is trying to encircle India with a number of naval bases in surrounding countries in such a way that it's like a string of pearls around your neck that the Chinese can then tighten to choke you and choke your neck.
There is a Cold War that is created between India and China.
The string of pearls theory has been discussed for more than a decade, and the Ukraine crisis has renewed interest in the subject.
My answer to that has always been, even if they're trying to do it, which is debatable, I would say that India has a fairly robust neck and that is not so easily strangled.
Nice.
China has very strategically emerged as one of the most important trading partners of the Indian Ocean region, and it accounts for 16.1% of its total goods trade as of 2017. And like we saw in the Belt and Road video, in the past 2 decades, China has been building infrastructure projects in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Pakistan and Djibouti. Why? Because all of these regions fall in the trade route of China's oil imports and their exports to Africa, Middle East and Europe. So we have the Gwadar port in Pakistan, Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, Djibouti's naval base and even Myanmar's Quake Phu port. This is what is being called as the strings of pearls theory.
At first
Now the
time
burning
like
question
कि
over here
जब
is,
news में पीछे
what
आया था
exactly
ना,
is India doing to
pearl
tackle
necklace
it?
का.
Well, instead of openly and boldly announcing its strategy like China, India has been slowly and steadily operating in a stealth mode with something called the necklace of diamonds strategy. To understand this, let's take a look at the list of strategic bases India has set up with partner countries as well as the various trade agreements that India has signed. And by the way, you must have seen a lot of people who often criticize the Prime Minister saying that he's wasting India's money by taking a world tour.
No, that's not.
Well, for those of you,
No.
here's why the Prime Minister of India spends countless hours in traveling all around the world.
हम अपने देश की अखंडता
इंडिया की
और
भाई
संप्रभुता के साथ
पोजीशन बहुत सही है
इंटरनेशनल
because of
रिलेशंस
मोदी।
बनाना
जब भी समय आया
बहुत जरूरी
है
है.
हमने देश की अखंडता और संप्रभुता की रक्षा करने में अपनी शक्ति का प्रदर्शन किया, अपनी क्षमताओं को साबित किया. चाहे स्थिति कुछ भी हो, परिस्थिति कुछ भी हो, भारत पूरी दृढ़ता से देश की एक एक इंच जमीन की, देश के स्वाभिमान की रक्षा करे.
रियली लाइक
हमारे लिए
कंट्री से
भारत की अखंडता और संप्रभुता सर्वोच्च है और इसकी रक्षा करने से हमें कोई भी रोक नहीं सकता.
First, let's start from the counter for China's strategic placement at Gwadar and Djibouti. For this, India has very cleverly placed its base over here in Oman, and here's where we have the Dakum port. The Dakum port is where India's important crude imports flow from the Persian Gulf. This place is strategically located on the southeastern seaboard of Oman and is overlooking both the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. On top of that, it is also straddled along the critical sea lanes in the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Eden. And all thanks to India's relation with Oman, we have military access to this port, which makes it a great defense point. Then we come to this region that is close to the second choke point, which is the Mozambique Channel. In 2015, Modi ji signed an agreement with the Seychelles president to develop a place called the Assumption Island for military use. But unfortunately, after this deal was done, there were a lot of protests, there was a change in government, because of which this diamond as of now is in a shaky situation. Then we come to perhaps the most important choke point of all, which is the Strait of Malacca and the other two choke points right beside it. Here's where we have the Changi Naval Base, wherein in 2018, Modi ji signed an agreement with the government of Singapore. This agreement has provided direct access to the Indian Navy itself. So while sailing through the South China Sea, the Indian Navy can refuel and rearm its ship through this base. This is followed by the Sabang port in Indonesia. And again, in 2018, India got military access to Sabang port, which is located right at the entrance of the Malacca Strait. So theoretically, we have a firm grip over the Strait of Malacca. And if you remember from our China's BRA video, 70% of China's oil supply and 60% of their trade passes through the Strait of Malacca. So choking this point is like choking the Chinese economy itself. After that, we have the Indo-Vietnam Diamond, and long story short, we have historically had a great relationship with Vietnam. We supply some of the most important defense equipment to Vietnam, and we have signed a comprehensive strategic partnership with Vietnam in 2016 itself. Then we have our important diamond in Japan. On 9th of September 2020, India and Japan signed something called the Acquisition and Cross-Servicing Agreement that would allow militaries of both these countries to exchange supplies and services on a reciprocal basis. So again, Japan and India
That's
can use
good.
each other's port
On
as
so
per
many
their
levels.
strategic requirements. And the best part about this point is that if you look at the map, you will see that it gives us a very, very close placement to the mainland of China itself. And then
And
we
Japan
have
is a
Mongolia,
great
where Modi ji
country
became the
too.
first Indian Prime Minister to visit.
They are like the
And more
brains of
importantly,
the-
India has established a very strong relation with Mongolia by giving out a $1 billion credit to develop an air corridor for Mongolia. And lastly, we have the Chabahar port in Iran. And if you remember from our China video again, Iran is also a part of the Chinese BRI initiative, wherein they have a railway line from China to Iran, passing through Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan to finally ending at Tehran in Iran. So here's where India very cleverly understood the importance of Iran. So in 2015 itself, when Iran was facing crippling economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation, India agreed to develop a deep water port in Chabahar on the Gulf of Oman. And as a part of this deal, Modi ji visited Iran and signed the agreement worth $500 million to develop this port and related infrastructure. And if you see, it's not just strategic with respect to China's infra in Iran, but also very, very close to the Gwadar port in Pakistan. Now, if you connect all these points together on the world map, you will see that it's literally a necklace around China, and more importantly, they are strategically located points that can be used to counter the Chinese in case of any military conflict. Now, although the relations with all these countries is not as ideal as we would like, it is a very, very significant step to make sure that the dragon is not left completely loose. This is what India is doing to make sure that we are protected from the notorious Chinese moves. And this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that are the study materials to help you understand India's geopolitical relations and strategy better. Before we move on, I want to thank our partners Wintwealth for supporting our content. For full disclosure, Think School is also an investor in Wintwealth. Wintwealth is a wonderful platform by which you can invest in bonds of NBFCs with strong backers and earn 9 to 11% interest. Now, most of you might be investing in.
ऐड है बस.
हाँ bad है.
Okay.
It is good कि ad placement end with a review है. Okay, so wow, मतलब after being like gaining knowledge ऐसे subjects ऐसे topics के बारे में when you read और when yeah, I absolutely love it. But
I love watching
it feels
these
like
videos.
कितना सब कुछ चल रहा होता है हमें कोई idea नहीं होता.
And literally लोग बात करते हैं गवर्नमेंट्स की कि गवर्नमेंट भाई सब अपने फ़ायदे के लिए, लेकिन अगर मैं एक चीज़ बोलूँ जो मुझे देख के अच्छा लगता है जो मोदी जी ने करी है वो है हमारे इंटरनेशनली एक पोजीशन को बिल्ड करा है, स्ट्रॉन्ग करा है एंड रिलेशंस बिल्ड करे हैं, तो वो चीज़ बहुत सही है. एंड उसी मतलब वही इस वीडियो में भी बात करी गई है. एंड ये तो हमें देखने को मिलता ही है कि जस्ट इट्स नॉट लाइक कि वर्ल्ड टूर पे जा रहे हैं, लेकिन वो डील्स एंड रिलेशंस बिल्ड करना इट्स नॉट ईजी. एंड मज़ा आ गया भाई ये वीडियो देख के. डायमंड वाली नेकलेस वाली थ्योरी पूरी एंड
मुझे पर्ल थ्योरी के बारे में आइडिया था थोड़ा बहुत, बट डायमंड नेकलेस इट वाज कंप्लीटली ब्रांड न्यू इन्फॉर्मेशन.
यस, so this is how India is trapping China. देखो China is militarily strong, we all know that, but वो ये ना जैसे है ना इंडिया भी कुछ मतलब ऐसे हल्के में लेने का नहीं है. इंडिया भी भाई पहुंची हुई चीज़ है, मजाक नहीं है. एंड दिस इज अ ग्रेट वीडियो एंड वेरी नॉलेजेबल.
बहुत मतलब इंटरेस्टिंग, मजा आया.
Yes, we enjoyed it and we आपको हमारे साथ अगर नॉलेज मिली एंड मज़ा आया हो देखने में, तो अगर आपको काफ़ी चीज़ें पता थी तो जरूर कमेंट सेक्शन में बताना. नहीं पता था तब भी बताना. एंड जैसे पायल को एक थ्योरी पता थी एक नहीं पता थी, तो यस
अगर ऐसी वीडियोस मेक श्योर यू कमेंट एंड लेट अस नो कि और चाहिए. एंड आल्सो
you can follow us on
Instagram, link is in description. And just remember one thing, you have to go and shine. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.